Okay, so our first essay, task 2, to what extent do you agree or disagree? Okay, so it's an argumentative essay. You don't necessarily need to discuss both sides of the argument. You need to have a clear opinion, okay, because it's asking you, do you agree or do you disagree? So, of course, the most basic answer is going to be your introduction, which should give your opinion on the topic. And then your body one should be your first reason you agree or disagree, and then your second reason you agree or disagree, and then your conclusion where you summarize your arguments and then repeat your opinion again. Okay. It's possible if you want to do some people think A, some people think B, but the danger with doing that with this style of essay is that sometimes candidates, you don't clearly answer the question because it's an agreement or disagreement. You're making an argument. So if you did some people think A, some people think B, you then have to very clearly explain why you disagree or why you agree with both sides of it. So I usually recommend to my students, you give your first reason why you agree or disagree and your second reason why you agree or disagree. Okay, and that's the easiest and most straightforward way to answer this kind of essay. So let's look at the topic. So the topic says, without capital punishment, the death penalty, our lives are less secure and crimes of violence increase. Capital punishment is essential to control violence in society. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this opinion? Okay, so it's about the role of the death penalty, capital punishment. Do you believe that if somebody commits a terrible crime, they should be killed by the government for it? Okay, so quite a controversial topic, quite a nice, topic to discuss because there's lots of points of view you can talk about on either side. So let's look at this candidate's introduction. Okay, the first thing I'm thinking when I look at this introduction is I'm thinking this is too short. Okay. I like my introductions generally to be about 3 sentences. 2 is usually okay, but I like to recommend 3. That's where you sort of give your background information on the topic, like your sort of paragraphs, background sentence, you give your opinion sentence, and then you sort of give me a hint of your subtopics as well. Like, what are you going to talk about in the essay? So what will you discuss? Okay, so this would be something like, recently the use of the death penalty has become more and more controversial as more countries decide to use it in an attempt to stop violent crime. However, in my opinion, the death penalty does not actually deter violent crime and actually undermines the moral authority of the government. Okay, so I've kind of combined them into 2 sentences. So I've given my opinion and I've given my subtopics. My first reason would be that capital punishment doesn't stop violence in society. And my second reason is that it undermines the moral authority of the government. Okay, so that's kind of the structure I'm looking for in an introduction. So let's look at this candidate. There are several reasons why the death penalty is critical to tackling heinous crimes and maintaining society's equilibrium. I would naturally probably say equilibrium in society would be sort of how I would naturally say that. In my opinion, I do agree. So this for me is too short. I would want them to give me the reasons why. So you can say due to reason, I agree. Or, due to something, or according to, because of such and such a reason, I do agree. So that would be a sort of a better, more stronger sentence. I do like the word of heinous and also tackling. Tackling crime is a good combination. That's the verb that sort of usually goes with it, tackling crime. So that's a sort of good vocabulary point. There's a small sort of grammatical error, and I would have liked this opinion to be a little bit longer. So let's take a look at the next one. First of all, capital punishment can deter people from committing an infraction of violence. An infraction of violence is not really correct. Infraction means like a sort of a tiny thing, or breaking the rule. So it's like breaking the rule of violence, breaking the violent rule doesn't really make sense. So it should be committing a violent infraction. Should be. The primary goal of executing criminals is deterrence. Okay, nice word, deterrence. Executing criminals, nice paraphrase of capital punishment. If the government properly conducts the law. So conduct is sort of like to run or to operate, and we don't usually use conduct the law. So we would usually use the word enforce. Okay, so you enforce a rule, you enforce the law, which makes it that you're sure how it's being carried out, or you make sure it's being carried out in the correct way. So if the government properly enforces the law, it will not only give potential felons, okay, also nice vocabulary, a warning message that they will not be given any second chances to perpetuate a severe violation like murdering someone, we need a comma, but will also fear the law. Because, hence, capital punishment is compulsory to remind a fear among the people who break social security, ensuring innocent people's peaceful lives. And so we need an and here, and because we're changing points. Hence, capital punishment is compulsory to remind a fear among the people. The way this is phrased is quite vague. To remind a fear among the people is compulsory. I would say also compulsory is needed in society to ensure people who break social security or have fear of retribution. Okay, so that would be a much clearer way to phrase it. It's ensuring people who break social security have fear of retribution. This idea of to remind of fear among the people. I think it's the use of this word remind, like you're reminded of a memory or reminded of something. It's in this context, remind of fear is kind of too vague. So to remind people that if they commit a crime, they'll be punished, maybe could make sense. Overall, I'm thinking this is a very well-explained argument. In terms of task completion, they've given me their opinion. They've explained why, and they've linked it back to the question with their therefore question. So they've given their reason why, and then they've explained how this helps answer the question. So when they talk about extending and expanding on your point, this is what they mean when they look at task achievement, is that you're talking about deterrence as the benefit of capital punishment. And then you've given me a lot of detail explaining exactly why capital punishment deters people from committing crimes. So in terms of task achievement, great. In terms of vocabulary, also very strong. Second of all, the death penalty can hinder cruel retaliatory offences, which are usually triggered by the thought that they are not treated unrighteously or the punishment did not fit the crime. I don't know who they are in this sentence. It's a sort of, they've tried to use a reference, but it's not clear who they're talking about. Hinder cruel retaliatory offences. Okay, hinder, great word. Retaliatory offences, great word. Okay, for instance, no matter how long or strict sentences are given to the perpetrator, how long or strict the sentences that are given to the perpetrator, or don't restrict the sentence, we'll just get rid of that. Strict sentences given to, for instance, no how strict the sentences given to the perpetrator, it is far inadequate to reach the murder victim's justice. It cannot raise dead people to life. Okay, nice use of a semicolon. Thus, this measure, in other words, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, would be the most reliable way to mitigate such discord in the first place in order to accomplish the justice of murder victims as well as to limit further offences. This is a really good sentence. I like this a lot. I mean, there's a couple of there's too many commas here, 1, 2, 3, too many. But other than that, it's a very minor point. I like the idea that they've gone for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. This is that kind of like less common vocabulary, or less common lexical items that they talk about in the banned descriptors. So that's a very nice way that they've put it in. I understand what they mean. They're sort of talking about the fact that, sentences can't always bring justice for a family, and so maybe the only way to bring some kind of justice is for execution. Otherwise, family members of the victim would suffer remorse forever. Besides, there is not doubt some lawbreakers must be executed, such as psychopaths, lunatic rapists, and serial killers. Okay, again, they've tried to use some very subject-specific vocabulary here, which is all linked to crime and types of criminals. So, again, excellent vocabulary. Suffer remorse. Again, to suffer remorse, that's a sort of key phrase that often goes together. So that's excellent knowledge of vocabulary. This is because most of these types of offenders are irredeemable, damaged psychologically, or irredeemably damaged psychologically for an extended period, or genetically different from ordinary people, making them commit a brutal and lawful act without any guilt. Okay, so again, this is a very strongly argued sort of sentence. This is saying we should have the death penalty because otherwise, families of the victims who don't feel they have justice could try and retaliate in other ways. And how do we get justice? And, some people can't be saved, so we need to kill them. So I'm like, okay, that's been sort of well explained. I like that. In conclusion, due to the effect of deterrence on potential perpetrators and the prevention of retaliatory offences, capital punishment must be implemented. Okay, yeah, and then this is a nice summary. You don't really need your conclusion to be much longer than this. This is because he does exactly what they need to do. Okay, he summarizes again the 2 points that they made in the argument, and so that's totally fine. So overall, I'm thinking task achievement. Very strong. They answered all parts of the question. They explained and expanded themselves. Potentially, if I was going to be like really picky, I would ask for some more specific examples for them to talk about. But overall, I thought very strong. I would want to give a 7 for task achievement. In terms of coherence and cohesion, it did link together very well. They used sort of, some linking words, but not too many. They varied it up a little bit. And the essay sort of flowed logically quite well. So I would want to give a 6.5 for that. In terms of vocabulary, I thought vocabulary very strong, like some attempts to use less common words. They tried to use specialist vocabulary linked specifically to crime. So I thought that was great. In terms of grammar, I would give it a 6.5. There was a couple of sort of, issues in word formation and plurals and things like that. A couple of odd commas here and there, and a couple of sort of odd choices, but their meaning was always clear and it did never affected what they were trying to say. So in grammar, 6.5. I would say overall, I would probably, to be honest, it's sort of sitting in that 6.5 to 7 range. I think realistically in the IELTS exams would probably get a 6.5. I could see an argument where they would want to put it up to a 7. I think overall a 6.5, just because looking back, I'm like, yeah, no, there was a couple of these, issues where it wasn't quite formatted correctly, even though I knew what they were trying to say, and their introduction was a little bit too short. So I think realistically in the exam, it probably get a 6.5. If someone wanted to argue with me and try and bump it up to a 7, sure, we could have that discussion. I think probably 6.5, but very close to getting to a 7. If they could just, especially with the grammar, just sort of keep an eye on those kind of smaller mistakes and vocabulary issues, and that would really help.